Hello and welcome to Room 442. I'm James Sharman, Mikey Singh, Albert Vitani, and Sarah Pararia. Club football is back this
Finally.
weekend, this Saturday. Huge games across all of Europe, in particular, of course, the Premier League. Now, of course, the last 10 days or so, it's all about international football, right? Which Sarah loves. I enjoyed it personally. But in case you didn't watch much international football, here's kind of what happened. How we doing the monitor here? No, we do now. We're good now. So there you go. That was the international week or 10 days. That was some big storylines. But let's get right now to the action this Saturday, this weekend. In fact, the big game goes on Sunday when Manchester United take on Newcastle. Yes, fifth against third. Just 3 points between these teams. It's a huge match. More so, I'd say, for Newcastle, who want to try and maintain their race for fourth place. The billion-dollar question we'll get to shortly is, are the rumours surrounding Eddie Howe fact or fiction? Let's hear now from the man himself, reflecting on the last time his team played United, which was, of course, the League Cup final.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think we've looked at it like that. I think we've looked at the game and tried to break it down without any emotion, and just, as I say, try and look at the game and try and improve certain aspects of our performance.
They actually played really well in that match, despite, of course, United winning their first trophy in some time. But let's get to the billion-dollar question, okay? The rumours around Eddie Howe are, will he remain as Newcastle coach? There were some reports this past week in Spain and Italy and Germany, across all of Europe, basically, some real rags are saying, listen, Jose Mourinho might well be the next manager of Newcastle. Bertie, this is a Newcastle team who last year, for much of the campaign, were just dreadful, as they have been for many years prior. In comes Eddie Howe, turns it all around. Now they compete for fourth place in the Champions League berths in the Premier League. Why would they even consider getting rid of Eddie Howe?
I think there's both facts and fiction to this. I think we always knew this was going to happen when you get that type of influx of money, and now you're talking about potentially finishing in a Champions League place. Maybe the owners want more of a high-profile manager, and who's more quote-unquote high-profile than Jose Mourinho, no matter what we think about his coaching tactics, right? He brings a lot of attention to Newcastle and almost makes them seem a little bit more legitimate. I love Eddie Howe, and I know you do as well. But I think maybe the owners are thinking about the future of this club. And after potentially getting into the Champions League, maybe let's look for someone with some more name value.
Why is it always Jose, though? I mean, Roma's okay in Italy, right? But they're hardly bossing it at the moment. Yet he always finds a way to slither his way back into those conversations.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen so far, Sarah, from this Saudi Arabian-led consortium that own Newcastle, is that they're actually pretty smart. They don't make too many knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah, I mean, but we also said that this summer is going to be very telling. They have been responsible. They haven't spent a ton, but I think this summer might be the first time where we see them spend big, especially because the team is performing after so long. They are a club that players will want to go to now. So I think that is all going to change.
They've been smart with their transfer dealings, Newcastle. You're right. They don't just splash the money. But I think once you get into that Champions League territory, you become a quote-unquote top four club. Now you got to spend like the rest of them.
Well, part of it has been due to financial restrictions, right?
Right.
They haven't been able to go out and spend maybe the way that they would have wanted to in this past January. But one way you can get around that, and you not get around it, but one way you can spend money without being imposed by these financial restrictions is by spending money on your manager. So maybe that's just the next step, the next evolution of a football club is just bringing in that really well-renowned manager to
Defensive, pragmatic, boring manager, right? Newcastle United, right? They love attacking football. They're renowned for great centre forwards, pace out wide. You know, the Kevin Keegan teams of the 90s, Bobby Robson teams, right? This team attack. Jose would never be accepted there. Believe me, they'd accept Mike Ashley as the owner again before they accept Jose Mourinho over Eddie Howe. I'll tell you that much. As for United, I want to talk about Marcus Rashford. Mikey, you know, what a campaign he's had so far. He's up for a new deal very shortly. And rumours were this week in the press around $500,000 a week.
Yeah.
Is he that elite? That puts him at the top end of professional football, right? Not Ronaldo or Messi, right? But the echelon below there. From what you've seen so far, we saw numbers that how good he's been this year. Is he that elite?
Well, he shot down those rumors and said those numbers are essentially ludicrous and that it's false narrative. Is he that elite? I mean, we know the way that the world is going and football is going in terms of valuations, and there's inflation that's natural that's happening. He should be the highest paid player on Manchester United. I think him and Bruno Fernandes should be. Is that 500,000 a week? Maybe that's a little bit too high, because if you're comparing it to Ronaldo's and the Messi's, he's not quite at that level. But he should be 400, 350,000 a week. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, 500,000 I think is crazy. I mean, based on this form, if he stays in this form, he's definitely worth that. But we've only seen one season of this, right? And the season's not over yet. I think you got to see a couple more seasons. There's a reason why some of the top players in the world get paid this money, is because they do that every single season. Every single season. Can Rashford get to that point? I think he has the ability, but it hasn't been shown yet.
Well, it's a good time for his contract to be up then, right?
Oh, what a great time to do it, right?
Well, the thing is, if he's worth that much, how much is Scott McTominay worth?
Oh.
4 goals to Scotland, beat Spain this week. Hey,
There it is.
I had to get it in there somehow, didn't I?
He
Albert,
always scores for them.
he does. I mean, listen, what a great result that was.
Yeah.
Albert, you have the bet for this one.
Yeah, boring bet. I'm going under 2.5 goals. I think around this time of the season, a lot of teams start changing the way that they play, a lot more cautious, and I expect that from Newcastle and Manchester United. Newcastle just 2 points off Spurs, a point here, and probably Spurs dropping points against Everton will do them really well.
No Ericsson, no Garnacho in this one, of course. No Almiron for Newcastle
No
either.
Casemiro
No
either.
Casemiro,
as well. Yeah,
big
suspended.
man.
Yeah, that's right. All right, time for a break.
Yep.
When we come back, it's to the top of the table. Leeds up against Arsenal.
Well, in particular, Leeds, I think they have very clear DNA, you know, how they are, how they behave, the character, that passion and energy that they play with, you know, and they've been doing it for a long, long time. And now with a new manager as well, with some new ideas, some players that they've been injured as well, which they have some issues with, they are back right now. So a very dangerous team.
When opposing managers use the terms energy and passion to describe you, you know you're not really that good, right? You're not saying, wow, what a great technical side they are. It's energy and passion. They try really hard. Still, Leeds actually 14th in the table. Play better of late under their new manager, of course. But the Gunners in first, they're just bossing it right now. Really, for me, it's fait accompli. They're going to win this thing. They're 8 points up on Man City, who have a game in hand, of course. The question I want to get to start with here is Mikel Arteta the new Arsene Wenger? Sarah's laughing. What I mean by that is that when Arsene Wenger took over from Arsenal, they had some issues a couple of years prior. He redefined their identity, their personality. They began playing a really fun, attacking style of football. They believed in themselves, and they were successful. And Arsene Wenger was pretty arrogant. Arteta, as likable as he generally is, he's shown some real arrogance there on the sidelines in particular. So is he the new Arsene Wenger?
Arrogance or confidence, James?
Fine line. Just ask Albert.
No,
Yes.
we can't ask that question for several years. It's not something that just happens overnight. Arsene Wenger was legendary at Arsenal, and he was there for so long with that squad, and I don't think it's fair to have that comparison right now for either Arsene Wenger or Mikel Arteta. Give him some time, but I see the comparison you're making, and it's been great what he's done with Arsenal. But is he the new Wenger? I don't know. Ask me in 10 years.
Well, you think he'll be there in 10 years?
You never know. He needs the consistency and longevity. He needs a couple of Premier League titles as well. And one other thing that Arsene Wenger did do was he started a trend in the Premier League and bringing over foreign players, right? That's pretty massive. And I don't think Arteta has done anything quite close to that. But what he's done in a short amount of time is incredible. Like I think it's underestimated how unbelievably amazing this team has played this season to overtake Man City by 8 points at this time of the season. Nobody even thought that was even close. And we talked about this before. This guy almost lost his job, and he turned it around. You know, so he deserves a lot of credit. But as for the next Arsene Wenger, I don't know. But he's definitely whatever the next Mikel Arteta is. That's who he is.
I mean, it's all about context, right, Mikey? I mean, the context of where this team was this time last year, a team that was fighting for top 4 football, looked much better under Arteta, but no one in a million years would have thought they'd be competing and contending and being favourites to win the championship by April.
I would even
following year.
I would even argue that the way that Mikel Arteta's come in and implemented his system Arsenal is overperforming based on the players that they have. I think Mikel Arteta has done an unbelievable job at creating a system that if someone goes out, they can simply plug another player in and they know exactly what the role is. That's such an underrated just asset to have in a side. And, you know, the players that they brought in, Gabriel Jesus, he's been missing for most of the season, yet Eddie Nketiah is still able to step up. I know they got Trossard halfway through January, so you know he's made a really big impact since he has come, but still, like he's not a game changer in my opinion. Zinchenko, really good signing, still not a game changer. Jorginho they brought in as well. These guys are very good complementary pieces that you can plug and play, but it's not like they're going out and they're breaking the bank for you know buying a team. They really didn't upgrade their team in such a significant way that I think this turnaround, you know, you got to give so much credit to Mikel Arteta.
His transfer business has been incredible. William Saliba, Zinchenko, Odegaard. That's all Arteta. Thomas Partey, key players. I mean, look at Saka and Odegaard right now. Those two, in my opinion, are favorites for Player of the Year, and they play on the same team. It's incredible.
Yeah, for the award not named Erling Haaland. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right though.
Yeah.
Do you think Pep would, in a million years, sell both Zinchenko and Jesus?
I know. It
Arsenal
seems so
again?
strange.
If he
now
could do a
looking back
redo,
at it.
there's no chance.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think so. Well, like we talked about this before. I think at the time maybe City didn't see Arsenal as a direct rival.
He didn't.
In terms
clearly.
of getting the title. Yeah.
Clearly. Still tough schedule coming up for this team. You know, before the end of the campaign, they're at Liverpool, they're at Man City, they take on Chelsea, they're at Newcastle, they take on Brighton. If you're an Arsenal fan, how are you thinking right now? What are your emotions? Because last year they were really close to top four football. They crumbled down the stretch. They've done that a number of times over recent years. If you're a Gooner right now, sitting beside a Spurs fan, just warn you. If you are a Gooner, how are you feeling right now?
Listen, we've spoken about this time and time again, but Arsenal keep proving us wrong. We keep thinking that they're gonna fall, and they don't, and they're consistent and they play good football. Yeah, if I'm a Gunner right now, like I'm definitely nervous, but also the team has given me so much confidence as well, right? Like they've proven that they are playing good football and they can win these games, and they haven't really slumped. So I don't know. You got to have confidence in your team. I think he would be confident. Yeah, it's a tough schedule. Be realistic about that. But I mean, this year is so strange too. Like going to Anfield, is that
who knows?
what
They
does
have
that
a-
even mean right
they
now?
have
You
a
know what I mean?
Not what he did this
record
time
there.
last year, that's for sure.
They have a really bad record at Anfield. They do.
They
But
do.
I mean, I think if you are a Gunner, you're excited but also nervous. You have that Man City machine behind you that's humming right now, so you can't drop any
And
points.
they could win out, right? It's that simple. Of course, playing Liverpool as we speak right now. Leeds have won 2 of the last 4 as well, playing much better football under Rudy Gracia. Plus 275 for the drop low still. So that's one thing to consider. Mikey, money-wise, where are you laying your North Star bets money?
Yeah, so historically, Arsenal haven't lost to Leeds in their last 13 matches. So 11 wins, 2 draws in their last 13 games. So as much as, you know, we would like to see the underdog story come through and Leeds pick up some points at the Emirates, I don't see it happening in this one. So I like Arsenal to win, but there's no real value in that. However, the over-under for goals is set at 3.5 in this one. That's higher than we usually see, and I'm gonna take the under just because that number is so big. So you parlay an Arsenal win and under 3.5 goals. That's at plus 114 at North Star Bet.
That's some value there.
Value.
I like that one. Moving on now to the next match. Chelsea up against Aston Villa. We know the story behind Chelsea, although despite the draw last time out, they are playing much better under Graham Potter. But Villa have been one of these stories since Unai Emery took over. Is he the most underrated coach in the Premier League? Before we get to that, let's hear from the man himself.
Really, we escaped of the bottom position, and now we can think our new challenge. A new challenge is to be in the top 10.
All right, let's get to it, shall we? Is he the most underrated manager in the Prem?
He's a really good manager. Underrated, I think that's a little bit unfair. We know the pedigree that Unai Emery comes with. And it's funny, we were just talking about Arsenal just now. The last time Arsenal, they've won 6 games in a row. So the last time Arsenal won 7 games in a row was actually under Unai Emery back in 2018. He's done a decent job, I think, coming in with Villa. We mentioned this at the time. I thought that it was a smart hire because Villa had underachieved at that time. They still had a good roster, but I still believe that he could have done better this year. But like I said, decent job. He's tied with Chelsea in the table. If they win this match, they're going to leapfrog Chelsea. He's a really good manager.
That's crazy to me that the Aston Villa at this point in the season can jump above Chelsea.
Yeah.
But when we talk about, at the end of the season, signings of the season, he has to be in that conversation, not just any player. He's not only turned his club around, he's got Ollie Watkins, who I think could be one of the most important players on this team, scoring goals again.
And he came with a big chip in his shoulder, didn't he? After failing at Arsenal, where he wasn't backed at all. In comes Arteta, gets all the money, and he's backed. So he comes there, of course, great pedigree in Spain. And we shouldn't be surprised, because before the season, people thought if Steven Gerrard is actually a really good manager, Villa should be pretty good.
Yeah. Well, especially also with Coutinho being injured for what feels like
right.
forever now. I have the bet here, James.
Yeah, you do.
This is, I think, one of the best games of the weekend. 10th and 11th place. Staying away from a winner here. Not convinced with Chelsea yet. I know they've been in good form of late. Going for all the goals. Both teams score an over 2.5. Both teams have been scoring handfuls of goals. Chelsea's finally getting into their rhythm, but so is Villa. And so I see this one, lots of goals. I couldn't tell you who's going to win this game. I know Chelsea's the favorite, but no, not convinced yet. And they have several injuries still.
I have one bet just to throw in there.
Yeah.
Emi Martinez to be booked at plus 600 anytime. I think if Villa have a chance to get a point or win this game, he's going to go back to time wasting. Plus 600, not bad.
I like that too, yeah. Yeah, Chelsea is an interesting one, isn't it, right? Unbeaten in 4 now, 3 wins in the last 4 games, I think it is. Playing better, less pressure on Graham Potter. He's smiling once again.
Champions League too.
Champions League coming up shortly as well. But there are rumors of a big fire sale this summer as well. All right, time for another break. And we come back, we're going to go to Tottenham Hotspur. Hey, Bertie, how will that be? Looking forward to that one?
Mm-hmm.
Spurs, that's next.
I've spoken to the group about something I believe in wholeheartedly. Things can change in football very quickly, so you have to stay on it all the way through the game. And every minute is important, every second is important, and I think that's growing. I think that mentality is growing, and I just think it was a strong sign of it down at Chelsea with how we came back from being down twice, and then scored a very good goal to nick a very good point.
So Everton's manager Sean Dyche talks about the character of his team, whereas Spurs' outgoing coach Antonio Conte speaks about the selfishness of his side.
Yeah.
That's before the break, of course. Now he's gone. These guys meet up on Monday in what should be a pretty entertaining match, I think. A lot riding it for both teams. Stellini now in charge of Spurs. Okay, Albert. Stellini is a long-time servant under Antonio Conte. Long time, been there for years. So you think he buys into what Antonio Conte is selling and probably agrees with the way he looks at football. So why is he the right guy in the interim to lead this team post Antonio Conte?
I don't know if he's the right guy. I think he's just the guy that's there. And the time that Conte was away after his surgery, I was recovering, he did a pretty good job. And the players seem to really like him. At least that's what reports say. And sometimes I feel some of these assistant managers don't necessarily completely agree with what the number one guy is saying. I think Arteta had something to say about that when he was at Manchester City. There were certain things that Pep did that he didn't necessarily agree with, but you fall in line because that's the pecking order. I don't know if he's the right guy right now. I think it's good that Daniel Levy and Spurs are taking their time to find a manager, but I also think, listen, if there's a ready-made guy there who Spurs fans and Spurs players would want, Mauricio Pochettino, bring him in, give the club a boost, and try and finish in the top 4. But they're going to go with Stellini until they find somebody.
And there's big rumors about Nagelsmann being the number one target.
Yeah, he's kind of
this
shot
summer as
that down, though, right? He still feels a bit shocked and heartbroken over the Bayern thing. So I don't know if you necessarily want to bring that guy in right now, right? If he's
Maybe.
emotionally jaded.
But it's a few months from the summertime, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
yearning might come back, and a bit of money
Great
helps too,
manager,
right?
right?
Yeah, a bit of money
That's a
helps.
great signing.
Exactly. The billion dollar question, Mikey, was will Spurs finish in the top 4? Right now they're top 4. Now they got to the Champions League knockout phase. You know, they've been in the cups. For most teams in this league, they'd love this season, right?
Yeah.
But for Spurs, it's been this disappointment. Do you think, given what's happened so far, what you've seen, they will end up hanging on to that 4th place or even 3rd?
Man, this race is so tight. I'm not convinced by Spurs. I'm not convinced by Newcastle. Heck, I'll even throw Liverpool into that mix, because you never know. They can still make
Yeah,
a
you have to,
very
I think.
a
Yeah.
very late run here. Like, to be honest, if I'm looking at this table, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about Liverpool at the end of the season being 4th place in this group. But, you know, as we've seen the new manager bump, I know it's kind of a fallacy and it doesn't actually exist, but I still think there might be something there to get the players who have clearly have gone through a lot, clearly have lacks of motivation here, just to get a little spark under them and hopefully ride this out, because it's going to be so important to Spurs moving forward if they can find a way to get into the Champions League. But I think the real billion-dollar question in this segment is, how torn is Albert Vartanian right now, having to watch Spurs go up against his guy,
My guy Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
How
Listen,
torn
this
are
is
you?
a horrible time to play Everton, but a great time to play Spurs. I mean, Spurs are vulnerable. They're going to Goodison, who are going to back their team, and I really think they can take advantage of Tottenham. This is by no means a straightforward win for Tottenham. This is going to be a very difficult matchup. I'd actually lean towards Everton.
Well, my bet actually was just that Everton winning and under. It's going to be a low-scoring affair, this one. Nasty. Sean Dyche has that team playing organised football once again. Yeah, it's Sean Dyche football. Long diagonals, crowd the box, physical. It works.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for an Everton right now, you're just clinging onto your survival. You have to play that way. So I think this is a great opportunity for the Toffees to really embarrass Spurs. Is it Conte? Would you hire Conte now? Like, at some point, he'll be given a job.
I
right?
mean,
we
for
know the deal
sure.
there, though.
It's the same thing though with him, with Mourinho. There are certain managers that are just so emotional and they show it. They wear their emotions all over their face. I've never liked managers like that. It's too much. I don't like the drama. I personally wouldn't, because that to me takes over the talent at one point. Mourinho's obviously a talented manager, but his antics on and off the pitch.
Wait a minute, Sarah. You don't like emotional
go.
managers?
Here we go.
Pep Guardiola, some would say, is pretty emotional.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
he's emotional, but do you think he stirs the pot the way Mourinho and Conte do with his
AKA
players?
bury the players and not take any responsibility.
He
I
doesn't
don't
take
think
much
you can compare the
responsibility.
two.
No,
Truly,
I'm saying, I'm saying that Pep doesn't do that as much as the other two.
That's what I mean.
But he
How
hasn't had
you
to. When has Pep been in a situation where he's had to do that?
No, that's true.
He's
always
always
had the
in
players.
great
That
teams.
Also true.
I will say this: Spurs, they had Mourinho and Conte. But when it's good with those managers, it's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
it really
It
is.
is,
But
yeah.
when it starts going the other way, it goes negative really quickly,
Trying to
and
think of-
all the blame is deflected onto everybody else except themselves.
I'm searching for a hilarious metaphor, but I can't think of it right now.
I mean, I wouldn't go near Conte with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah,
Team
it's
as well, because if you give him what he
poisoned.
wants, he'll win.
For sure, but it's just the way that it's played out again and again and again and
Yeah.
again. This isn't the first time we've seen it, so I think maybe his next job might be a step backwards as opposed to a step forward. 'Cause I don't think
That's
he did
interesting,
himself
yeah.
anything, good.
I think
here.
you're right. But I mean, Spurs have also now lost Paratici, their director of football, for who knows how long. A
crazy.
UEFA ban
Yeah.
from all things football
A
related for his
FIFA
FIFA ban
ban.
from his Juventus financial, misgivings, shall we say. So right now you got Dan Levy
Mm-hmm.
and there's some interim coaches.
Yeah, you don't want him negotiating all those transfers because we're not going to get anybody.
No,
we,
exactly.
Tottenham, are going to get anybody.
Crazy times, crazy times. What I love about the next match we'll talk about is that before the season, you wouldn't think it's very sexy at all, right? Brighton against Brentford.
Ooh.
Like,
I love this match.
so. But it's going to be one of the games to watch, I think, of the season. This, to me, is a marquee tilt. They're both looking so good, both on 42 points. Brighton with the edge just about on goal differential. Two of the surprise packages, or maybe that's just unfair to talk about Brighton in particular, who've done this for a couple of years now. Which team has had the most impressive season, Sarah? Given that they're both underrated, not much money, they scout superbly, they develop players superbly. There's no ego, really, it seems, with the managers, be it Graham Potter or De Zerbi at Brighton, and certainly Thomas Frank has no ego whatsoever. They're two truly likable clubs. Who's been most impressive?
They both have. I think I'm leaning towards Brighton because of the Graham Potter situation at the beginning of the season. And then the entire Caicedo, is he going to go? Is he going to stay? Oh, he's going to stay, and he's going to be their best player, and he's so excited to be a Brighton player. There was a bit of drama, and, they had to kind of go through, I think, a little bit more turmoil than Brentford. But Brentford have been stunning. But I think because of that, I'd say Brighton have been more...
More adversity, right? I would think with Trossard left early in the season, right? Cucurella.
I also will say, I
Mopé.
think watching Brighton is a bit more fun too. Like there's certain players on Brighton that I've completely just fallen in love watching them play, and Matoma, McAllister,
Matoma,
since he
yeah.
got that World Cup, came back, just the confidence is oozing, and yeah, the Ecuadorians too, Caicedo, Estupinian, it's I've really enjoyed their football.
I think it's got to be Brighton, right? I mean, you lose your manager mid-season, you
Yeah.
get better.
Beginning of the
They-
season,
they-
actually, really. It was,
Was
like
it?
October.
Yeah, close to the beginning of the
They had
season.
a
But
great start too.
3 games in hand on I think Spurs.
Yeah.
And just 7 points out of fourth. I mean, we were asked this question. I think we talked about it. Can Brighton actually crack the top 4? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe top 6. But now, looking at the way things are kind of panning out, Newcastle is slumping a little bit. Tottenham don't look great. Liverpool don't look great. Why can't Brighton crack into that top 4? They have the ability to do that.
Yeah, no, and right now Brighton and Brentford, they're level in the table on 42 points, but Brighton have played 2 less games than Brentford.
Huge.
So that's a big difference at this time of the year, and they have the ability to just pick up all 6 of those points, no matter who they're facing. They've had such impressive victories. But I do want to give some love and give some credit, because it sounds like we're not giving any love to Brentford, and Thomas Frank has done such an unbelievable job for that team, and now for the second year in a row, they've put together a competitive season in which now this can potentially progress into something bigger and better for Brentford here. They can establish themselves as, what did we call it a couple of weeks back? Potentially the new Everton here. It is such a remarkable story what they've done. And if they can finish off the season on a strong note, which still is an if, because they are still, as good of a season they've had, they still have these question marks about whether or not they can go out and finish this. If they can get into a European position, it would bode so well for this team moving forward.
Yeah, Europa League. I mean, to start
Europa
with,
League would be
making
great.
that jump to the Champions League, it's great. There's tons of money coming in, but it's not easy. And I think at Brighton, from man for man, I would say they've got a little bit more quality than Brentford. Brentford's a great collective, right? The Ivan Toney situation, continues. We don't know what happens there. Will he be banned at some point? That could really, really hurt them as well. But I look at Brighton, you mentioned the players there. These are players that could play and could step into some of the top 4 teams in this league quite easily. And they might well do it next year as well.
Could be a very different
I
Brighton
don't care about
side.
the new contract. I don't care about that. He's probably going to move to a very big club. So, yeah, I'm giving Brighton. But, I mean, how could that, as hard as it is, how could Champions League football turn a team like Brighton into a destination club? I still wonder about that.
It would help them keep their players, though, right?
That's the
I think
biggest
that's
Yes,
the
you could pay
biggest
them.
thing.
You
right?
could pay them, yeah, you're right. But
And there's Champions League football.
Well, they want to play
for.
Champions League football.
No, for
'cause
sure.
A lot of the players could leave, and that would be the
Yeah,
biggest
that's a
thing.
great
If they
point.
don't make top 4, I think several of these players could leave, and then we're seeing a completely different Brighton side at the beginning of next season.
I think even making the top 6 would be good enough
Yeah.
to keep a lot of those players. Either playing Europa League. A lot of those players,
Oh.
there are some that can make the move to a top 4 type of side in
Yeah.
any league, but there's a lot that probably couldn't crack a team in the top half, let alone the top 4. But it'll be difficult. Let's say they do make the Champions League, to bring in players, because you're still trying to fight off Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal, Manchester City. I mean, those places are so much more appealing than Brighton. It's
well,
just
let me
the way
ask
it
you this
is.
then, Albert. So let's pick a name, Jude Bellingham. Let's pick him, right? A guy that's probably going to move to another club this summer. Would he rather go to Liverpool if they're not in Europe, or to Brighton if they're in the Champions League?
I would think so. I think he'd rather go to
Liverpool,
Liverpool.
yeah.
I mean, I know he said that at some point in his career he wants to go back to Birmingham and help them come back to the Premier League. I don't think he would do that with Brighton. I mean, it's Liverpool, right? You know more than anyone else.
No, it is a story, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of
Well,
unfair on Brighton, right?
That'd be such a great story. He says no to all the big clubs. I'm going to Brighton.
well, it's like Zava going to.
Hey, Albert doesn't
love
get the
it.
He doesn't.
joke.
That's Ted Lasso. You got the bet here very quickly, Albert. In this one.
Yeah, Brighton and both teams to score at plus 200. As good as Brighton are at home, they don't really lose. Brentford have goals in them, so I like both teams to score as well.
Zava, by the way, what a moron.
Oh,
Just too much, isn't he?
He's made after Zlatan Ibrahimovic,
Clearly.
right?
Clearly.
So good,
Yeah,
though.
I mean, I
Such a
wouldn't
good
sign him.
show.
But I think we'll see as the season progresses. They'll regret that signing.
We'll talk more about Zava.
Yeah, more about Zava, but not after this. When we come back, it's those other games, the marquee matchups you've been waiting for us to talk about. Coming up very shortly from the Vitality, Bournemouth against Fulham. The Cherries in 19th place. Really odds on in many books to be going down to the League Championship next season. Fulham, 39 points, 9th at the table. They're safe. And that's all they wanted this season. We'll give them that, but one of the stories so far. Mikey, where are you laying your money?
Yeah, so Fulham's going to be missing their 2 most important players, in my opinion. That's Mitrovic and that's Willian. So I actually like Bournemouth in this spot. They've played fairly decently of late. Of course, that's relatively. Fulham's also lost their last 2 matches. So I actually like, I think at good value, Bournemouth draw no bet at -120.
All right, I like it. All right, Palace up against Leicester. Palace now with Roy Hodgson as their manager. He has returned. Whoever saw that coming? When Roy made that emotional speech last season at the end of his career, 136 years of age. Who knew that he'd be back at Crystal Palace the next season? Good for him, though. It's brilliant. Leicester, by the way, are just
Shocking.
too good to go down, they keep saying, but I'm not sure about that. Sarah, where are you putting your money?
So first of all, James, thanks for this one. Biggest match over the weekend.
When I saw it, I thought, I'm going to
think.
save that one for Pararia.
Crystal Palace and Leicester. Come on now. I'm going for Palace here. Palace at plus money, plus 155. Selhurst Park. New manager bounce. New, old, back again, whatever you want to say about Roy Hodgson. But I think the fans are going to play a crucial part here. Pack the stadium. You got to give your team some hope and some praise. And I'm thinking that with that, maybe Crystal Palace can get the job done. Leicester as well have been miserable this season. So I don't know. I think with maybe some new motivation in the training room, that'll get Crystal Palace get the job done.
Palace aren't bad, right? They had a tough stretch of games, and it cost Vieira his job, but they've got some winnable games coming up now, so we'll see if Roy can steer the ship. I hope so, because quite honestly, he's one of the good people in world football is Roy, and I want to see him do well. Forest up against Wolves. Forest in 16th place, Wolves in 13th place, just a point separate these two. I'm taking Forest for the win, and over 2.5 goals. You can get that for plus 430 on North Star Bets. Forest with one home loss in 10 games overall, where Wolves only 2 away wins all campaign, right? 2 teams that play very different football, whether they're home or away. So I'm taking Forest in that one. Finally, West Ham up against Southampton. Another doozy. This one on Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, Mikey.
Yeah, so Southampton, for whatever reason, they play way better when they're not at same areas than when they are. They've actually, from a percentage standpoint, have picked up the most percentage points away from home than any other club in the Premier League. So whatever reason, it's been working. Now this obviously there's so much at stake in this match. 2 teams that are both in relegation right now, and the number for me was way too big for Southampton to not put a sprinkle on it. So Southampton double chance still pays you plus money at North Star Bet.
All right, there you have it. They are your Premier League games for this weekend. So much enjoyable football, eh?
Those are massive
No,
matches.
it's big
Relegation,
matches.
relegation.
Relegation
I-
tussles, right? That what, 13 down to 20? It's
all
nuts.
of it though, all these games are so. I'm just so happy club football is back.
Yeah, I know you are. But we're still going to go back to some international now, I'm afraid.
Let's go.
But it's with red card, yellow card. If you don't know how this game works, it's pretty simple. I'll put out a statement there, and these guys will give a red card if they vehemently disagree, a yellow card if they can see both ways, seeing on the fence, or if they agree completely, play on. All right? All right, this is Canadian themed, right? Because for Canada, it's a huge week on and off the pitch, of course, but 2 big wins. They're on the way to Vegas for the Nations League finals in June. So let's get right to it, shall we? Here's the first statement, all right? Canada is already a soccer nation. Mikey, let's start with you.
I hate to do it.
Ding ding ding.
It's going to be a red card. We're on the way. We're making progress. Canada, as we talked about in the past, the next step for this country is to get big matches, to get tier 1 matches, to have countries like Brazil, Argentina, the Englands of the world, the Germanys of the world, to have to want to play Canada in friendlies. They got to take that next step. Canada's yet to win a game at a World Cup. If you look at what happened on Tuesday with BMO Field, where they had to close down half of the stadium because, not enough people were interested in the prices that Canada Soccer were charging. There's also a lot of turmoil happening at Canada Soccer. There's a lot that needs to be fixed. And also you're competing with the likes of the Leafs, the Raptors, the Jays. It's a tough market here in Canada to really, decisively say that they're a soccer nation. But trust me when I say that, they're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Sarah, where are you at with that?
Not even a shadow of a doubt. Everything Mikey said, completely agree. As well as think about little things like finding the games on television. If we were a soccer nation, you'd be able to watch the games anywhere. Think about Europe. Games are always on. South America. And yeah, going back to what you said about the fans filling up the stadium. Chile filled up Monumental. Chile's been awful. They didn't qualify for the World Cup, but they wanted to see their national team in a one friendly against Paraguay. Filled out Monumental. No, like we are not there. I hope we get there. I hope you're right. But there are so many different aspects from all the way at the top of Canada soccer, all the way down to, like the fans and the support. And maybe that's because they're not getting the right advertising or, having access to the football matches themselves. But Canada for sure is still a hockey nation. And there's no doubt there.
I just feel like it's unfair to compare Canada to Chile or Brazil or Argentina.
I can do it for any European, any African nation, any Asian nation.
But those are true soccer nations because soccer is the national sport of those countries.
What would it be fair to compare it to then?
You can't. Right now, I'm red card. I don't believe that is a soccer nation, but like Mikey, I believe that Canada is on their way there. We were at the game in Hamilton against USA, and it was packed. We were at the game in Panama, packed. When they qualified against Jamaica,
Costa Rica.
packed. No, Panama, when they played Panama.
At BMO Field.
At BMO Field. Well, Alphonso Davies scored that goal, right?
Yeah.
So it's getting there, but it's going to take a long time for soccer in Canada to kind of be on par with the other sports here because those sports have a century ahead of them in terms of tradition and history.
Sure.
I agree. I think it's about momentum too, right? A true nation, you'll see it with the momentum. You mentioned how these were sold out stadiums of qualifying when the games meant something. A few months later, removed from Qatar, and you're playing Nations League games against an unsexy nation. And the fans don't show up. Yeah. Now, those fans that did show up were fantastic. They were loud.
For sure.
They did themselves proud, but not enough of them showed up. The bottom line is there isn't the money in this game, in this country. Corporate Canada hasn't woken up just yet. That's part of it as well, I think. Real football nations, they're not begging and screaming for money. It's not happening because the money's flowing in.
Exactly.
Right?
You know what the next step of this, too, and John Herman touched on it? It's the away support, too. It's the traveling to matches. And no matter when Canada plays, make it feel like it's a Mexico-USA match, right? He said that. So I think that's the next step in the progression.
Starting
the
in
Voyagers
Vegas?
do a great job.
Cheap flights down there.
There you go.
Everyone likes Vegas, right? All right?
We should go to Vegas.
We should go to Vegas.
I'm in.
All right. I'm in too. Let's pitch it. See what happens.
Okay.
Because that would be a fun
Oh, my
few
God.
days. Football aside. All right. Next statement for red card, yellow card is Ismail Kone has supplanted Atiba Hutchinson in Canada's best 11 for the big games. Start with you, Bertie.
I'm going to go yellow card. I just feel like no one knows when Atiba's done. I don't think he's done yet, but I think it's definitely moving in that direction. I feel like Ismail Kone is Atiba with a lot more skill and a lot more attacking prowess to him than Atiba does. So I think he'll eventually take over that position, but I just don't feel like Atiba's done yet based on the way he looks.
Two games. He kind of suggested 2 games
I
left.
know. And I feel
a
like
little bit more.
you
But
think
we'll
he's
see.
done?
He said he's almost near the end of
Yeah.
his career. He came out and told he says it's not his announcement yet, but they play obviously the Nations League finals and then they play the Gold Cup. I think after the Gold Cup he'll be.
You think he'll go
You
to
think
the
he's
Gold
going
Cup?
to the Gold Cup?
I think he's going to go to the Gold Cup.
I really hope so. I hope
So he's still got some time left, but Kone's definitely the guy in that midfield, and he's an improved version, I think, as well.
So for the next big games, who is starting? Is it Atiba? Is it Kone? What do you think? Has he supplanted the great Atiba?
Yeah, I'm going play on here.
All right.
And I think Ismail Kone, what we saw on Tuesday night, that was a guy that was bossing the middle of the park. He was on, as John Herman said, he was on the level of Alphonso Davies, Tejan Buchanan, Stefan Estacio in the way that he was playing. In all due respect to Atiba Hutchinson, who is such a loyal and unbelievable footballer, but also a great servant to Canada and the soccer in this country. We have not seen a performance like that out of one of Canada's midfielders in a very long time. The move to Watford has done Ismail Kone wonders for his confidence, his poise, and I think he took that next step for me. If you asked me this before Tuesday night, I would have said, probably not. Atiba Hutchinson is still that guy, but I think now moving forward, Ismail Kone has worked his way into Canada's best 11.
Yeah, I agree with Mikey. Play on here. There comes a time when, as a coach, you also need to focus on the future and those players and giving Kone that opportunity and the confidence. And like Mikey said, that game on Tuesday, he was incredible. And it's nothing about this has anything to do with Atiba and what he's done. It's just everyone gets to a point in their career where it unfortunately has to finish, and it's a tough pill to swallow. But Kone has really done great things, and he's really proving everything he's taking from Watford. That move seemed to be
Had to happen. It's the right time, right? I mean, it's been so rapid, his ascent.
Yeah.
It's only a couple of years ago you began hearing about him, unless you really followed Montreal closely.
For sure.
It was really a couple of years ago, wasn't it? And then within a couple of years, now we're saying he's supplanted the great Atiba from the starting 11, and I think it's pretty fair to say he has. But dismiss Atiba at your peril. He still has a role to play. I know he's 40,
Definitely.
but we saw him yesterday at the press conference, and he doesn't look 40.
Oh my God, no.
Trust me. I mean, I was 40 many years ago, and I looked 40.
Did you?
Yeah.
Many years ago.
He is just one of those. I don't want to say he's a freak of nature. It seems like a cruel term to use, but he's a freak of nature,
For sure.
right? He's just so healthy and looks so much younger than he actually is. So maybe he's got some big games left in him. Let's hope so. Off the bench is a lovely person to bring on in a match, a close match, perhaps, just to kind of calm things down, because that was a young team we saw this past week, right? I think under 25 years of age was the average age, up until the subs came on. So, things are on the pitch, I think, are still pretty rosy for Canada. Here's one for you. Speaking of older players, Milan Borini will still be Canada's number one at the 2026 World Cup. He is right now, it appears, because he was this past week. What do you think, Bertie?
Red card. No, I don't think so. I think by the time that comes around, he'll be close to 40 years old. And when I look at this team, it's a very young team, as you mentioned, and this is no disrespect towards Borjan, but I feel like if there's a main weakness on that side, I feel like it's in between the sticks. I mean, defense needs a bit of an upgrade as well, I believe, but you need a younger keeper there, and you have two, I think, ready-made guys to take over in Crépeau and Dane Sinclair. So by the time 2026 rolls around, I think Borjan will, I don't know if he's going to retire, but he'll be replaced by one of those keepers, I believe.
Yeah, I'll go, cop out a bit here.
Yeah.
With keepers, they can play a bit longer. So that's the only reason why I would say maybe the age isn't as big as a factor. I completely agree that I see some weaknesses in him. I mean, we saw him at the World Cup, not a good World Cup for him at all. Will Crépeau, will St. Clair be at that level in 2 years? Who are we to say? We can't tell. They could be, and that's when maybe they'll step in, but it's so hard to say. There's so many factors that come into play here. Herdman also is really loyal with some of his players. You know, we weren't sure with Atiba, right? And then we saw him play at the World Cup, and we were all like, we need to sit down. We have made mistakes. So it's hard to say. I'm swinging both ways.
No, but I agree with you. I mean, for goalkeepers, mid to late 30s isn't necessarily old,
No.
right? You can still play at a high level. But I think there is some depth there with Crépeau in particular.
Yeah.
St. Clair, James Patemis in Montreal too.
Yeah, I'm going play on here. I still think he's going to be the guy
Oh.
in goal in it's just 3 years' time,
Yeah.
right? It's not the longest time. And I think the only guy who's capable of surpassing Borjan here is Max Crépeau, and he's coming off a really devastating injury. I think everyone else is too far behind. I don't know too much about Tom McGill. Maybe he's a guy who can come in, surprise a few people, but for me, Borjan's still the guy.
Tom McGill at Brighton.
Hello,
Speaking of Brighton
Seagulls.
earlier, right? Yeah, we'll see. It's a good debate to have though.
Yep.
And I think there's some depth, if not world class depth, coming through there. Some depth for sure. All right, we're almost done. We've got one block left, and that is our open block, right? So I'll give you guys the break now to decide what you want to talk about. You got about 3 minutes to figure it out. All right. All right. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Room 442. Shaman Singh, Vartanian Pararia. We're almost done for the day, but there's some big games coming across Europe, of course. No bigger, perhaps, than Der Klassiker.
Der Klassiker.
As Thomas Tuchel takes the reins of Bayern Munich for the first time.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much happening around this game. First of all, only a point separates the two sides. The top of the Bundesliga. Already a big match besides all the coaching drama that's happened. But now with all of that, I mean, Tuchel's first game is against the biggest rivals in Germany. Then they have to go play City, remember, next week. So I'm very excited to see this. I want to see how they do under pressure. And honestly, I hope Dortmund win this game, because I'm not happy with the way Bayern Munich have been acting, treating their players and their coaching staff. I don't like it.
Tuchel's former club, too.
Mm-hmm.
How about Tuchel against City again? The last time they played the Champions League was the Champions League final when he was at Chelsea, and he beat Pep, right? Pep overthought it. There's so much going on. That is such a strange thing to happen in terms of Nagelsmann getting sacked by Bayern Munich. I know there was a bit of smoke around Nagelsmann, but I just was not expecting that at all.
Such a bizarre time.
And
Well,
you go from one top tier manager to another guy who's you can argue is one of the best in the world.
Another guy, though, that falls out with ownership and the brass, which is what happened to Nagelsmann.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, you kind of play him a father a little bit, but Tuchel's got a lot to prove because he still feels very aggrieved about the way he was treated at Chelsea.
Yeah.
I think he's still a top manager.
Yeah, me too.
He really is.
Do you think he poaches some Chelsea players and brings them over to Bayern?
Mason Mount
Yeah,
was
they're
saying,
already
The rumor,
and
connected.
Kai
right?
Havertz too.
Yeah.
Was saying, "Oh, I'd love to play for Tuchel again."
Yeah,
not,
no
not.
kidding.
It'd be tough
wink,
to
wink.
refuse Bayern Munich at this time.
It would be, wouldn't it?
It's going to be interesting, though, to see all these players that have been on their international duty come back and see a new coach.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Like that. I'm very interested to see how the players, after international break, anything can happen. It's always, the first game back is always a mess. So that on top of them, some of them just meeting him days before and now having to, play under him.
You said it before, though. The bounce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be-
Something
Bounce.
tells me Bayern's going to win the Champions League under Tuchel.
Oh, I
really
hope
feel that.
not.
But I think-
miserable.
I think we're bearing the lead here. How does this affect Alphonso Davies?
Yeah.
That's
Well, we
such
could have
a
asked him if he was
massive
available
question.
to us.
That would have been great. I would love to talk to him about it. What
There
his
you go.
thoughts are on it.
Yeah.
But
We'll find out. Boy, it's a great point, though. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, managers can make or break players.
they got Cancelo there too, right behind him, and
Who, by the way, Bayern have said we're not going to exercise that buy option because things have not gone well there, apparently, overall. So, anyway, that was Room 442 for another week. Hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Enjoy the games this weekend. There's some huge ones coming up, especially as mentioned at the bottom of the table. Love those relegation battles. We'll see you next week.